It's already changing, in relative scales, but already changing a lot of therapist women's lives. Because once they start, they usually make about 5 to 6 times what they were making before. So their income level increases a lot.
Hello, amazing Sweevera community. This is Amber, the host of the Heart Leader podcast, and we are back this month to focus on the amazing attribute of giving and receiving. I have with me in this podcast, Helle Jeppsson. So Helle has this very diverse background. She has studied all around the globe. I want to tell you a few of the places because she originally started out studying in Sweden. Then she made her way to France, then Chile, then came to Washington, D.C., and now resides in Mexico. So when it comes to cultural diversity, she really has that and an awareness around what it means to understand the different ways that we interact as people. She also has taken time to understand that in her career. She has been in Washington, D.C., spent some time in a career in there, but ultimately ended up falling in love with someone from Mexico. We don't need to go into her personal life, but what that did is it led her to pivot in her career and go into a beauty and spa service and a wellness area. But what her first love was and what her passion was understanding women in the area of leadership and really children and what their needs were. So that's what I'm really excited to talk with her about today. So Helle, thank you so much for being here and for sharing this with us.
Thank you, Amber. What a nice introduction. I loved it.
Oh my God. Well, when you think about it, you have such a robust background. You have done so many things in your life, studied all around the world. And so there are these things that most people, when they sit back, go, hey, you could be leading a Fortune 500 company. And you really could be. And you've taken your skills and you've applied them in a way that you're helping humanity. So I want to start there. I want to understand what led you to that space.
Well, it's a long story in many ways how I ended up here. But I think in the end, when you have a passion, you find a way to spend time, building on that. And for me, that's my motor every day, and being in startup world and being, in entrepreneurship, it can be, a rough ride many times. It's a difficult environment and not always easy. But that motor, when there are days that are difficult, when the impact something that you're doing that is sort of your motor, that keeps you going, and that's what gives you energy to really, keep working and keep building. So I think it's finding that passion of something that you really burn for makes a huge difference. And for me, that's, when I was young, when I was around 12, 13, I had the luck of starting to volunteer with UNICEF. And I was quite young. So I started, working with UNICEF more as a volunteer. But that was always, what I started, seeing the impact you have when development programs work since working with children, and in that area of development. For me, that was always a drive. I saw like the impact you could have, working in that angle. So it's always been sort of my drive from that age.
That's amazing. Yeah. So can you help us understand what led you into the beauty and spa industry?
Yeah.
Because you were in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
You had so many other opportunities surrounding you.
It's sort of strange sometimes, why you end up in something and the reasoning behind. But in my case, I was doing a master's program at Georgetown in international relations. I had studied business and economics before that. And my drive at that age was also, my goal was to work at UNICEF. That was sort of, where I was going. And while I studied my master's program, I took a job, like a part-time job at the International Development Bank, working in women's leadership project. So it wasn't, children and youth that I was interested in, but it was, I started looking into Latin America. And from my angle, the experience in the Nordic countries in gender issues and women leadership issues, the Nordic countries are so advanced in so many of these things that I always say it's a little bit at the point where there are no issues anymore. There's always work to do, but, coming into seeing the situation in LATAM for women, the real situation for a lot of women in LATAM, and, the challenges that we're still facing in LATAM, and the impact that had on children, it's sort of, for me, it all connected the dots. So I worked within the International Development Bank for a few years. And then I got a job at the World Bank within the Children and Youth Department. So I sort of found, it's sort of like when you work towards a goal and you get to your goal. But what happened within, sort of happened simultaneously was that my passion was there, but my day-to-day wasn't. It's sort of like sometimes you have these ideals of what you think, your job is going to be. And, I'm very much a people person. So I was, always thinking that I would do field work, that I would work, with people sort of in the field. I think if I had gotten a job at the World Bank working on the field, working in LATAM field work, I would probably still be there. But at that time, it was very much an office job where, it wasn't as close to people as I wanted to be. And it felt very distant from, my idea of what the work was going to be. And at that same time, my sister studied with me. She did undergrad and I did grad program. So we lived together. And she wanted to stay for a year in the US after she had graduated. And she had started a project, looking into a project with 2 Americans to start a spa company. So it was really her project, and it was
I'll help you out, sis. Yeah.
And I think it wasn't really in her, area as well, but she had met these 2 Americans that she liked a lot and that she did, a very good connection with. And she's like, doesn't matter what they want to do. I want to, join them doing it. And, they had a good people connection. And eventually she got another opportunity back in Europe and she didn't want to leave them sort of hanging, So she's like, well, I might not be able to do it, but my sister can. So it was sort of random, it wasn't really in my scope of interest. And then I met them. I really liked both of them a lot as people, they were 2 great guys and I could completely see myself doing a project with them. And I felt sort of responsible for my sister. So I said I was in the process of negotiating a full-time job with the World Bank and I was at a part-time job. So I was like, I might as well, finish my master's degree. I might as well help them, figure out their way and I'll help them find someone else. And we started working together and I loved it. I think after 2 weeks, it was like the days I went to, to build this spa company, I would wake up at 4 a.m. and I would be so excited. And this feeling of creating something, where nothing exists and sort of your ideas can get you to create something from scratch. And, you think of something in the morning and in the afternoon, it's done. That process was fascinating for me. And then I started diving into wellness, that I think for a lot of people that might have the same impression I had when I started, maybe a bit that it's like a superficial world, that a lot of people that feel that, spa wellness, it's very superficial. For me, it was that when I started. And when I started sort of digging into it and I saw the depth of it, I was like, no, this is not superficial at all. Wellness is very much something that makes an impact in people's lives. It's a core. I think today we understand it better after the pandemic, but I could see the transformations of people that, came into the wellness space and, needed time for them, how this environment at the end is sort of about helping people in some weird way, but it sort of felt that you're connecting and that people were happy when they left. That I love that part of it, that you could really see that you transform people's sort of well-being. And I really liked that. So I started digging and then, that's been almost 19 years since then. So it's been a while. But yeah, I really liked wellness in general and that industry. And now I like it even more because now I actually have a real impact also on people's lives, on my therapist team's life. So it sort of has completed its circle in some way.
I love what you just said about how sometimes when we're on the outside of an industry looking in, we have one perspective of what it is. And I know that even when I started looking at massages, I had a resistance to it 15, 20 years ago because I'm like, I let somebody else touch my body? What? How could I do that? And now I go in for massages like every other week because of the health benefits of it. But it's so easy to stand on the outside and project until we inform and educate ourselves on what it is that the industry is providing. And so I would love if you would be willing, we're going to get to what you've built this industry that you've created or this organization that you've built now because of the industry into. But I would welcome it if you would be willing to share for individuals who still might be on that cusp, like I was even back then, because there's kind of a barrier to entry sometimes about what it even means to go to a spa. Oh, that's just for women. They go there to pamper themselves. But there's true health benefits to these things that sometimes we don't really stop to think about. So could you share some about that?
Massage, if we were talking on the massage aspect, which I think is sort of one of the services that provide the largest health benefit, it's very preventive for many specific, concrete, physical, things that are super helpful in terms of preventive health. For example, sports massage, which is one of the type of massages that, that are most popular. A lot of people think of sports massage as something that you get after you've done, I don't know, when people run half a marathon or a marathon, or, when someone has done a lot of exercise in some specific event. But really, sports massage, the best part of it is that it prevents, not lesions, like it prevents like fractures and, bone problems and things that can happen, because it incorporates a lot of elements that help you, how do I lose the English word sometimes, but
like ligament tears and things like that.
It's a very preventive tool specifically for people who are doing sports, especially when you come up in age. It can really help you become a person that can do much more sports without the impact that it can have on your body, so I feel like there's a lot of preventive measures with massages that people not always think about in that sense. And it's an investment to keep healthier in the long run in your life, like a bone fracture or a hip fracture or a lot of things that many times are, because your body's not really prepared to it, and massage can lead you to be prepared. So I think that can have a huge health impact on people. Then also massage is something people don't think about that many times. It's one of the best antidepressants. If you go and get, if someone is depressed or has any emotional health issues, a lot of times if they go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, a lot of times one of the best, one of the first things, if they have, with or without medication, a lot of these professionals will recommend massage as one of the best things as a natural antidepressant. So I think, that's also an aspect that a lot of people don't think about. We've had several times, for example, where we've done massages, as a gift, basically in elder people homes for people that are lonely and depressed. And cases, like a few months ago, one lady from one of these homes called me and said, there is this, Maria, one of the women that haven't been out of bed for like 3 months because she lost her husband and she's been so sad. She got the massage, and that same afternoon she was downstairs with the other people, so it can really have such an impact. At the end, it's physical touch, so it definitely has that human, impact. A lot of people are very lonely, and that feeling of connection with someone, plus the physical benefit. Massage is actually a great tool for so many people, and then you have all different, like prenatal massage is one of the best things you can do, for women that are pregnant, that, for some parts of pregnancy, it can be physically very enduring, and that has an emotional impact somehow, where you feel, there's a lot of liquid retention, which makes women have a lot of pain in their legs. And you can do lymphatic drainage that helps them feel much better, which makes it a happier pregnancy, which makes a happier baby. It's sort of like it has a lot of impact. People don't really, when they hear massage, they feel it's, it's like you said, self-pampering sort of thing, but it has a lot of emotional and physical benefits. I could talk for hours about the benefits, but I think it's an industry that has much more depth to it. And then today, which is, something that I personally feel a bit sad about, because I'm the one that sometimes can end up like this. You're so connected to technology today. Our generation is so, connected. Sometimes we don't realize it, but we spend a lot of our waking hours with technology, with our phone or with a computer, or with, in front of, if you do, an hourly count, a lot of people have this issue today. And with massage, we've experienced a lot of clients where like, this hour or hour and a half of massage gives me time with myself awake, because if you think of it, I don't think you wouldn't be that person, but a lot of us sometimes don't spend enough time, just sitting, reflecting, thinking, meditating. A lot of us have a hard time spending that time, and massage sort of forces you to do it while you're awake. So I think that also is really positive. And, even if it's just an hour and a half, at least for me, it's been a little bit of eye-opening of saying, okay, this really feels good, spending time with my own head and thinking, and I should do it more. You sort of start thinking, feels good. I feel good afterwards. I should provoke to do this more on my own, without the massage, but, just sitting and thinking, we don't do that enough anymore.
Yes, what a great point. And I know from my own experience of them, like I suffer from migraines, or I don't as much anymore. But for those who do spend a lot of time on keyboards, like you get this syndrome, and massage can help like loosen that up so you get the blood flow back into your muscles, because we don't stop to think about the impact of what that muscle tension does to the blood flow that then contributes to disease and illness and injury. And so
injury, that was my word I was missing. No, you're so right. And I think the posture, how you sit, we have this program where it's like corporate massage, and part of, I always tell people when we talk about the programs, like, we do the massage piece of it, but it's also a lot of educational part of it, because a lot of times, the therapist can feel, depending on your body structure, they can sort of diagnose what it is you're doing wrong with your posture, usually. And for me, for example, I was like an eye opener a few years ago when they were like, no, Helle, your neck posture, how your neck is shaped today, we can tell that you are watching your phone, in this position, and every angle that you do this, it's like X kilos that you carry your head, and that has an impact on the neck. And when that has an impact, you get headaches, So they were like teaching me how, if you're going to watch an iPhone or an iPad, how to always have your head supported or sit straight or lie down or, never go forward. It has a huge impact on your health in general. So I think those are the types of things you sort of learn through a therapist, how to improve. So yeah, so we should all sit straight.
Like even me, I'm sitting here, my arms up on a thing, and I'm like, oh, okay. Even talking to you, mental note, because it's throwing off the asymmetry of my body. And I get talked to about that every time I go in. So it is those types of things. And when we talk about preventive care for our health, massage is a great preventive care. And when we talk about other services that a spa can offer, like the skin care, it is so much easier to take care of your skin in advance than to go in somewhere and have other services that maybe aren't as good for your health afterward. And so I don't know if you can talk to that, but I know my entire life I've done Ayurvedic type approaches for skincare. And it has been a game changer for me. And I've learned this through like spa and wellness services of, if you take care of your skin, then you don't need to reverse anything. And that's things you learn through spas and services that you offer.
Yeah, and the skincare aspect of it as well. I feel like a lot of times, by getting a facial or getting a treatment, a lot of times I'm also very interested in, this educational piece of things, where it's sort of like you have access to that person's attention, it's sort of like, and a lot of times I'm very strong on that with my team, that they should always share their knowledge and they shouldn't feel like they're selling or, because at the end it's knowledge that for them is so obvious, but not necessarily for that person you have in front, and a lot of things with skincare today, for example, that is so important with sunscreen and protective health for skin cancer. And a lot of that information flow can come from, people that really know how to explain it well and how to sort of explain, what sort of sunscreen products they should use that have contain zinc, for example, that has a much better protection, and how, today's situation with ozone, it's not the same as our parents' generation, and that we should not, compare, oh, but they were fine, yeah, but we should be much more preventive, and that has a direct health impact. Or, how consuming the right amount of water has an impact on your skin, and that can lead to someone making healthier choices, and so I think it all sort of comes together. And at the end, it's also about, also say at the end, all these treatments, it is taking time for yourself. I remember still when my two children were super small and, you don't have 1 second for yourself. And that little space, an hour or two a month can really make such an impact of, okay, at least 1 hour to me can really make you be a much happier person. So yeah, I think it is a really nice industry.
It is. And one that informs you, because then when you go back and you have no time for yourself, how do you care for yourself? And if you have those little nuggets of information, it helps so much, because then you can take that home and still feel like, okay, I can implement these practices of not keeping one shoulder up and one shoulder down, or being able to know how to care for your skin. These things do begin to add up and chip away at the things that over time could add up the other way. And to me, even before we get into Scape, and what you've done with that organization, you are already making such a profound difference because anyone who came through your door was receiving those benefits. And now we can dive into what you've done with Scape, because you took all of that knowledge, all of that information that you had accumulated from building up this spa, health and wellness, and beauty industry with these two gentlemen. And then you brought it to Mexico City.
Yeah.
And you started this amazing organization called Scape. Can you share with us what Scape is and what you're doing with it?
So Scape is basically what it is wellness on demand. And what it is practically, there's like two parts of Scape. One is direct to client, and that is an app. Like if you had, a lot of our clients say we are like the Uber for spas. I think it's a very easy way to understand it. We connect clients with therapists that are vetted by Scape, and we deliver spa on demand to people's homes. Today, we have presence in 25 cities in Mexico, and we are launching in Colombia now in 3 weeks. So we're opening in Colombia and have this expansion plan both for the US, for Chile, Peru. So we have that on track for 2023. And then there's another part of Scape that is sort of the corporate wellness program of Scape. So what we do is we have sort of a recurring membership for companies that want to invest in their employees' wellness, which I think today it's quite interesting to see the shift, before and after pandemic. It's a bit of an eye opener for a lot of companies. I think the importance of, taking care of their employee and spending part of resources on wellness. It's definitely a shift in the industry in that sense. I feel there's much more interest. Companies really realize, the importance of wellness for the benefit of their employees, and therefore the benefit of, that the company will do better, sort of thing. So it's sort of a circle. And what we do is we have the membership, and in the companies, what we do is we go in and we do a chair shiatsu, like chair massage. So it's an easy tool for companies because it's a dressed massage. So you're dressed. The technique is shiatsu, and it's shorter time span, but the effect, it's very much, around the problems that usually arise from people sitting too many hours in front of the computer or sitting down most part of the day. So it's very much thought of, to attack that problem. And also, I always put in the educational component, even if they don't realize it. We always have this angle of like trying to give them a quick analysis and, what can you work on this month until we see you, next week or next month. So we have those two parts of Scape. And Scape sort of came from, I had physical spas for so many years. And what happens in the physical spa industry is that most of the time you're fully booked the weekend. And during the week, I could see it during years, that people really wanted to come in for a service or really needed that massage or that treatment. But a lot of times they didn't have the time during the week. It wasn't that they didn't really want it. It was more like, and a lot of times what happens to us, and it happened because of bookings, they would book the service and then they would call us and say, oh, it didn't work out. I have, this or that. And, finding the time space to go into a spa can sometimes be a challenge, because if you think of the add up of the minutes, of like getting there, usually, going into dressing room, the locker, going into the treatment, and then 95% of clients, shower after a treatment. So they shower, go out, pay, check out, go home. That usually is a 3-hour time span. So during the week, it was hard for people that work or are parents, or, like life basically. So I always thought, how do I, I always saw it from the financial standpoint, obviously, of the business, that I was like, how do I solve this problem of like, I have so much space during the week that I'm not able to fill, even though I know the clients want it. Like, if the clients don't come, I'll go to the clients. So it was a little bit, Scape was born out of that, wanting to bring the level of the quality of a spa, but to people's homes. So that's a bit how Scape was born, like 3.5, almost 4 years ago, before pandemic. So we had a year there of a bit of a challenge, but so that's what we built. Today, well, so that's a bit the story around Scape.
And it's genius because ultimately you also give individuals who are booking the service an opportunity to choose from multiple different therapists.
Yeah.
So where at one location there might be a limited amount of therapists, now there's a plethora of therapists, as long as they're within that range, correct?
Yeah. So we have a quite strict process actually to be a Scape therapist. I mean, not strict, but we have sort of a process for someone to become a Scape therapist. Once they are sort of passed, we do, because we are in Mexico as a base, we do a security clearance process. We do a quality control process. It's all digital, so it's quite fascinating how, things that I never thought could be possible to do in the digital world, you can actually do it. And then we have a quality control process for the materials they use. So we finance the materials, because in LATAM, for a lot of women, just starting a job is a huge task, finding the resources to be able to start. So for me, that was really important when we started the business, was to make sure that we had the ingredients, to make sure we had an impact on, the therapist part, which is, for me, is sort of my motor, their life change. And part of that was like financing the materials so that they could actually start. It would seem, maybe in the US, it seems distant, but in LATAM, for someone to maybe have the resources to have $300 to be able to invest in, the massage oil, the sheets, the quality of the products, that to be good, to be able to deliver good service, would maybe not seem so impossible. But for a huge part of therapists today in LATAM, that's a very difficult mission to be able to start something like that. So we are that entry point, makes it easy for them to start. And when you finance a woman in LATAM, the effect is profound. I think we have 99.5% of return of sort of the loans. So that part is something, that I learned from the World Bank, the loan programs and women's loans programs. And I sort of wanted to have that within the business. So, so we do that. So that's the flow for someone to get into the structure.
Yeah. And diving into that a bit more, it's where it comes full circle for you, where you are helping to empower women and create leadership skills within them, because in many ways they're their own mini company.
Yeah, completely. That for me is my burn. There's like stories every day. I love that part of the company, and it's probably why I can't see myself do anything else, than to grow this so that it impacts more women, and their children. Because what happens a little bit is that in LATAM, like 62% of therapists in LATAM, which actually LATAM has one of the most dense therapist population in the world, but 62% of therapists in LATAM are in the informal economy, which means they're not, they work sort of in the informal side of things. And most of them, about approx a month, a therapist in LATAM makes around between $300 to $350 a month. Obviously, you can't compare it to the US, because also the standard of living, the cost of living is lower, but it's still, plus they make very little money in general. I mean, not everyone, of course, it's not general. It's like a large chunk of them make that amount. And then what happens in LATAM also, not in Brazil, because Brazil has a bit stronger labor laws, but in the rest of LATAM, they don't do, as in the US, double shifts or triple shifts. In LATAM, in a lot of, spas and in the spa industry, which is, I think about it and I'm like, it's so hard to understand that in an industry that focuses on wellness, that they don't focus on wellness for their employees. For me, it's like, hard to grasp. But their reality is that they do single shifts. And what that means is that for a lot of women in LATAM, they work 6 days a week, because it's a lot of places it's a 6-day work week. So that means they have 1 day off, and those 6 days, they usually have to come into work around 8 to be able to start at 9. And they leave, 8, 9 at night. And for a lot of people, they don't live close to where they work. So it also, add on public transportation piece to that. So it basically what it comes down to is that for these women, 6 days out of 7, they have no contact with their children. Or with anything else, but for me, my burn is sort of the children, so it sort of has such a direct, obviously super hard life for the women, but it also has a huge impact on their kids, because it means they are growing up without their mom being present, and a lot of times they're taken care of, by other family members or by the gram. I'm not saying that, that other family, which can be great also in LATAM, the family structure is one of the things I love the most in LATAM is this, family is a very large concept. And, that's a very beautiful part of society here. But it's still your mom, or your dad, just that most of I would say with us, about 92% of our team are women. So I always talk women because it's more women therapists in general. It's more of a female profession than men, but I also include them. But so they come from these very difficult situations. So when we started Scape, for me, it's the vehicle that can change, and it's already changing, in relative scales, but already changing a lot of therapist women's lives, because once they start, they usually make about 5 to 6 times what they were making before. So their income level increases a lot. They have flexible work hours, so they can, sort of this new economy, where people can sort of steer their own time, which in terms for me and the impact that I want to reach, which is the impact on their kids, also has a huge impact, because then they can steer their working hours and still have a lot of time to spend with their families. And then we give them tools like the financing tools so that they can actually start a job. And they don't work, some of them work full time with us, some of them work just hours. And for example, we had this woman some months ago. She started with us in another, not Mexico City, in a city that is like an hour and a half from Mexico City. And she was working in a spa there, and she had this baby, like a 6-month-old baby that was living with her mom in Mexico City. Oh. So she saw her baby once every 2 weeks, one day, because she just had like 1 day off, one Sunday every 2 weeks. So she would, in a month, the mom would see her baby 2 days a month. Oh. And she contacted someone in our office and like, what are my chances, to move city? And we were like, no, of course, move tomorrow. So she came, started to work here. Now she lives with her baby, such a, how also this flexible movement of like being able to come, I think it's like, I always think of these other companies like Uber and these sort of new economy companies that gives you that possibility that you can start your job in, one city, but if you move tomorrow to another, you can like start tomorrow. And it gives you this flexibility that I think adds so much value, especially here, where opportunities are more limited. So it has this, I always tell this story because for me, I'll try not to cry because all these stories makes me always very emotional. But we had, this Christmas, we couldn't do in person. There is this Christmas tradition in Mexico called posada, which is like the Christmas party, basically. Everyone does posada. And we had our posada, but on Zoom, because it was still sort of, the pandemic sort of was still in Mexico City, wasn't really accepted to do an in-person meeting yet last Christmas. And so we had, this Zoom meeting with all these millions of therapists on, and we were like, trying to have some sort of conversation online. And we opened sort of the floor for people to speak. And so, and then, we heard this voice of this little kid, like, hi, can I also say something? And he stuck his head up, 7-year-old little boy. And he's like, I just want to say thank you, to Scape, because since my mom started working at Scape, I now see her, and I was like, this is exactly the mission, So, I think that's it. Yeah, those stories at the end, we want much more of those stories. So yeah, I think that is, my sort of drive. And I think a lot of the companies' drive is exactly that. That's really nice to be able to have, a profitable business and still be a business person, but have that sort of impact. I think being able to combine it is priceless. So yeah, it's really nice.
And to have such a vision, I mean, obviously, just to have the vision of building out an organization that took a spa industry and flipped it on its head is vision enough. But then to take it and say, okay, how can we not only do that, but empower these individuals, right now, primarily women, but you're not limiting it to women, to anyone who has not had the opportunity to have a life where they can be with their family and create that opportunity. Because, having come from a corporate background, to make a good living, I had to sacrifice time with my child. That's why I walked in one day and just quit, because I had no life with my child or myself or anyone else. And I knew that there had to be a different way. And you've created that avenue to empower people. And it's not just empowering women. From what I read, you have individuals who may have other limitations or perceived limitations. Let's talk about the perception of limitation, right? And you've said, no, there's no limitation here. There's only opportunity. So can you talk a little bit about that too?
So we started this program, it sort of started itself, I would say, but obviously it's something that I was looking for anyway. But we started a program for visually impaired therapists to get integrated into Scape. And this woman, she was the one who sort of was the go for that. A couple of years ago, her name is Milica. She came into the office. She actually just, rang the bell on the office and came into the office looking for a job. I wasn't in the office that day, and my team was, and she came in, and, she is visually impaired. So she was walking with a stick, and she came into the office. I don't know the full story, but basically she was like applying for a job. And they, the way they told me afterwards, they were like, oh, Helle, you don't know what happened today. I was like, what happened? Oh, no, this woman, Milica, came into the office looking for a job. And, she's visually impaired. And she obviously thought that she was coming into a spa, looking for a job. And it's impossible. We could never, how could someone that's visually impaired work, going home to people through an app, for them, it was like completely impossible. And I was like, no. You told her no. And I was like, no, call her back immediately. And I'll meet with her and see, what she was looking for. And yeah, she knew exactly what she was looking for. She had, had the information about Scape, about the opportunity. I think, I can't remember exactly what someone had told her, about, the financial piece of it and, the safety aspect of it, because that's another aspect, through the technology. That's quite amazing how a profession that can be if you want to work on your own in Latin America, being a massage therapist, it's very hard because a lot of times if you announce yourself, it can be perceived as something else, and they can end up in situations that are very dangerous. So also like the safety of the platform. And I met with her and I was like, no, she was looking for a job at Scape. And I was like, well, we'll make it work, we somehow will figure it out. And we developed technology within the app, both the client app and, and the web. And so that her technology that can read technology could read all of our technology. So all of the notifications and all of it was read by her app that reads images. So we developed that, and then we worked with her and with clients. In the beginning, I would actually, every service she took in the app, I would have her tell me, and then I would call personally each client, to tell them that, Militz, the whole story about, you have to help her. And, and one day she came to the office and she's like, no, Helle, I can on my own. You don't call the clients, I was like, and I was like, okay, so she started working, and then together with her, we were like, this is such an opportunity. It's such, plus, also for the clients in the end, the massage experience for a client done by a person that has a visual impairment, the experience is amazing. They have a sense of touch that you can't even start to understand. You'll never experience a massage like that in your life. It's like one of the best massages you can have. Not all the time, but like in general, they have they have this capacity that no one else has, by their, by being visually impaired, their other senses are so much more heightened. So they are super talented. So we're like, this is great. It's the perfect match. We can, do a program that can actually help, and that is a good match. So we started this program, and what we've done is that we usually start off by them working in our corporate program. So it's like a softer landing into, understanding how to work and how to, slowly start, and then they start working within the app. And it's been a great success, and both, from wherever angle you see it. And I always try to speak of it in interviews, because I always feel like there is someone on the other side that's going to be listening that might not even have thought of it, because I said, don't, that other, CEO or head of HR or whatever that is listening. Like, I obviously doing it more for the purpose, but at the end, even if you think of it as a company decision, it's a good, decision. So do it, try to be inclusive. It will have a positive impact on, however you see it. And and we're rolling it out to the other cities. And I think also for our therapist team that work together, they also feel empowered, of being able to help someone else, seeing, that they can be that instrument. And, I think it's been a very successful program that we started.
It's an amazing program. We have a few moments left, and generally I'm so tongue-tied by that. I can't even speak. That's amazing.
I could talk for hours, that's the problem.
I love it. No, it's amazing. The outreach you've had and the way that you've taken an industry and not only shifted it, but then created so many amazing opportunities out of it. It just speaks volumes. And where usually we end on a question about heart leadership, you've already answered that in droves. So what I'd really like to do is take these last moments, and you are in a fundraising phase right now because you would like to expand what you've done. So if anyone is listening to this and would like to learn more about that effort, or how you're expanding, or what Scape, how they could just get involved in Scape or learn more about Scape, can you take these last moments and talk about that fundraising effort and how they can? We have about 2 minutes left, so I would love to spend it talking about that.
obviously, anyone who wants to get involved in any way, we are always welcoming. And yeah, we decided to raise our first round of capital exactly to grow and to expand, what we already know is working really well, to make it, larger and to go into new countries. For me, the US is a very interesting, market, and we are super excited to be able to start. So yeah, anyone who's interested would love to connect. You can connect with me. I don't know, I can give you my email, or you can connect through, social media channels. We are Scape MX, or through my email. I can, give it to you, and happy to connect in any way. We are online as Scape. I think that's the good thing about the digital world, is that it's very easy to connect. You can send a message through our Instagram and they will send it to me. So that's probably the easiest way to connect.
And that's SCAPE, right?
Yeah. So Instagram, we are Scape MX, because we started in Mexico. When we started, I don't think I ever thought I would start in other countries. So we always did an MX. But yeah, that's our social media channels.
Perfect. Yes. So reach out to you through Instagram. We'll have some other media that they can reach out through on the Heart Leader podcast, but they can just make inquiries through there and get all kinds of information.
Thank you.
It's amazing. Thank you for all you're doing. I know it's making a massive impact in your own area, and we definitely could use it here in the States too. So I'm very excited that we're one of your next target locations, and very honored to help get this word out however we can. So in the spirit of giving and receiving, by getting this word out and giving that way, we're receiving so much from you. And I'm just very grateful for all that you're doing.
That was so nice to talk to you.
And thank you, amazing Suivera community, for tuning in and listening to this episode of the Heart Leader podcast. I am your host, Amber. And once again, our focus is on giving and receiving this month. It is a reciprocal process always. And if you are interested in learning more about that reciprocal process, we have a download that you can get. Just journey over to the heartleaderpodcast.com, and you can find the link below, along with all of the amazing information about Helle and what she has going on with Scape. Until next time, I look forward to seeing you in the Suivera community.